"You're being moved to economy, sir." The gate agent didn't make eye contact as she handed back the boarding pass. Colonel James Carter blinked, slightly confused. "I had seat 1A. His voice was soft but steady. "Yes, but there's been a change," she said flatly. Behind him, passengers were already sighing, annoyed by the delay. With a quiet nod, he stepped aside, tucking the creased first-class ticket into his pocket. His back was straight, though his knees ached. The words "Medal of Honor Recipient" were stitched across the brim of his faded cap, but no one seemed to notice. He didn't protest. He never had to. Not through 2 tours of Vietnam, not through the ambush in Laos, not even when he'd been hit twice and still dragged 3 men to safety. The plane's fuselage felt tighter than the jungle tunnels he'd once crawled through, but he simply slid into his new middle seat in row 34, offering a polite smile to the couple beside him. Across the aisle, a young boy whispered, "Mum, who is that man?" The mother glanced, shrugged, and returned to scrolling her phone. No one knew, no one cared. Until 4 minutes later, the cabin door suddenly reopened. A suited man walked in briskly, flanked by 2 wide-eyed flight attendants. Passengers turned, puzzled. The man wasn't TSA, and he wasn't a pilot. "That's Robert Holston," someone murmured. "He's the airline president." He walked with purpose, not arrogance. The plane hushed as he stopped at row 34. "Colonel Carter?" the man asked, lowering himself slightly to meet his eyes. "Sir, there's been a terrible mistake." James looked up, not angry, just tired. "It's all right," he said, the same way he'd once said it to a medic while bleeding on a jungle floor. "I've sat in worse spots." But Holston shook his head. "Not today, sir. Not on my aircraft." He extended his hand. The cabin watched, breathless, as the elderly veteran took it and rose with quiet dignity. The 2 men walked slowly up the aisle. One by one, passengers began to clap. Not all at once, but in ripples, hesitant at first, then louder, until the applause was thunderous. Even the crew paused their checks. It wasn't rehearsed, it wasn't forced, it was respect, raw and rising. In the front cabin, Holston personally placed the colonel's carry-on above seat 1A and motioned him to sit. Then he turned and addressed the entire first-class section. "We downgraded a Medal of Honor recipient. That should never happen. This man represents the best of who we are. I apologize, not just to him, but to all of you, for failing to recognize that sooner." No one moved, no one blinked. As the plane took off, the mood had shifted. What had started as an anonymous boarding had transformed into a tribute. The man in seat 1B leaned over. "Thank you," he said, voice cracking. "My father served. I wish he'd made it home." A young attendant knelt beside the colonel. "Sir," she whispered, "my brother was in Afghanistan. He talked about men like you. I just want you to know, he never stopped admiring your generation." Mid-flight, the captain made an announcement. "We have a national hero on board today. Colonel James Carter, Medal of Honor recipient. On behalf of the crew and all of us at this airline, we thank you for your service." Applause erupted again. Some passengers stood, some saluted, others simply wiped their eyes. James nodded humbly, gripping the armrest tighter. His hand still bore the faint scars from a war many had forgotten. But in this moment, he was remembered. When they landed, he didn't rush to disembark. He waited, as he always had, for everyone else to go first. But this time, the passengers refused. "After you, Colonel," someone said. "You've earned that much." He stepped onto the jet bridge and was met by airport staff, ground crew, even a military honor guard that had been summoned in the final minutes of the flight. Cameras flashed, strangers clapped. A little girl ran up and handed him a hand-drawn card that said, "Thank you for saving us." As he walked away, Holston walked beside him. "It won't happen again," he said quietly. "Not under my watch." The colonel didn't need the apology, but the gesture, the presence, the effort, it mattered. Because in that single flight, a system forgot. But a man remembered. In a world that often overlooks quiet valor, never underestimate the power of one person standing up to make it right. Honor doesn't fade, it only needs to be recognized. As Colonel Carter exited the terminal, dozens stood in silence. Then one voice shouted, "Welcome home, sir." Applause erupted, and for the first time in a long while, James Carter allowed himself a small, tearful smile. Before we end this story, let us know in the comment, where are you watching from? If this story touched you, subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and drop a karma in the comments below.